Okay, so this is going to be a payroll screen capture video. Let's make sure we're recording here. Okay. And it's going to be the first paycheck of the year for Philo Kvetch, whose name will come up later. And week one, he earns $3,000. So he's going to earn 52 times 3,000. It's going to be $156,000 for the year. And fortunately, that's gross pay is not going to be equal to his net pay. So what are we going to take out? We're going to take out Social Security at 6.2% of the gross. So 6.2% of 3,000 should be 186 bucks. Yeah. Okay. This tax will cease to be withheld for Philo once his year-to-date gross pay exceeds 142.8, which it will, yeah, because he's going to make 156K for the year. So the total Social Security that's going to be taken out of his pay is going to be $88.53.60 for the year. His employer will have to match that amount. Okay. Medicare, what's the story? Well, obviously it's for medical insurance. It's 1.45% of the gross, which is $3,000. So if you're Garrett Cole, pitches for the New York Yankees, you make $35 million a year. Every single one of those dollars is going to be taxed for Medicare purposes. Yeah. Federal withholding. Are you married? Are you single? Do you have a lot of dependents? Okay, the more dependents, and if you're married, the less money is going to be taken out. Same thing for New York State. Okay. So I made up these two numbers for Philo. $540 a week times 52, so it's going to be well over $25,000 for the year. And the same thing for state withholding, right? Married, single, dependents, etc. Okay? All right. So those two we could find in charts, and there's formulas and so forth, and I basically just made up these two numbers for Philo. What's this number? Disability insurance. This is for off-the-job injuries that a person might have, including maternity leave. It's 0.5% of the gross pay, but not more than 60 cents a week. What does this mean in English? If you made more than $120 for the week, it's going to be 60 cents. So if you look at your paycheck, and you made more than 120, you're going to see 60 cents. If it's bi-weekly, you're going to see $1.20. Paid family leave, well, I updated this to 0.511%, so that's just over 0.5%. In decimal form, that's 0.00511. If you multiply that times the gross, what do you get? You get $15.33. Okay. This is for family situations that require for a person to stay home due to illness, possibly maternity, whatever. $15.30. Now it's up to $385.34 for the year. That number's going up every year, and so is this rate. Okay, so this could get nasty after a while. And for some reason, rather than giving a gross pay on which the tax would be applied, instead they give you the total tax amount that will be withheld. But if you work it out, $75,409 is the magic number. Once you go over that number, you have paid in the full $385. So anybody that makes more than $75,409 will pay in $385.34 for 2021, and you can fully expect that number to go up in 2022. This one just started a few years ago, this particular paid family leave scenario. So that's Philo's paycheck for week one. His net pay is just a little bit less than 2/3 of his gross, $1998.57. There could be all kind of other withholdings, right? There could be health insurance, there could be 401k, there could be tax liens, there could be all kinds of nasty things coming out of here. But let's stick with the basics, okay? $1998.57. The employer, as mentioned over here, has to match Social Security, has to match Medicare. So while the employee's getting hit for what? Looks like $229. Well, the same thing is happening over here, right? The employer has to match those numbers. Federal unemployment. Now, this does not come out of the employer's check. This is 100% paid by the employer. It is 0.6% of the first $7,000 earned by FILO for the year. FILO is going to go over the 7,000 by week 3. Yeah. So a total of $42 will be withheld from FILO's check. I shouldn't say withheld from his check, will be paid in by the employer for FILO. $42 for every employee that goes over 7,000 will go against federal unemployment. Okay. New York State unemployment, same routine, only the ceiling is higher. It's 11.8 for the year. It goes up every year. And this rate here, which I just made up, okay, for this illustration, is going to vary. If you are a seasonal employer and you are constantly sending people to unemployment to sign up, well, you're going to have a high rate. It could be like 9%. If you are a mom and pop delicatessen, you have the same 2 employees for the last 50 years, well, it's going to be a low number, probably around 2%. Okay, so that's going to vary. All right. So the employer is responsible for matching Social Security and Medicare. Those are the big ones, right? Especially the Social Security. And also federal and state unemployment taxes. In addition, the employer has to cover workers' comp insurance, has to have a policy, which could be very expensive. Now, if you have a non-hazardous job, like an accountant that goes to the same desk every day and doesn't travel, it's going to be a very low number, okay, for workers' comp. If you have somebody that works in a crew that cuts down trees and climbs up trees with a chainsaw, well, all kinds of bad things can happen. That's a very hazardous job. That's going to be very expensive insurance. It could be thousands of dollars a year just for one employee. Okay, disability, that's for off-the-job injuries and maternity. It's not a lot of money, right? 60 cents a week, $31.20 for the year, so it's not a lot of money, and then there's not a lot of benefits paid either. I think the paid family leave is a little bit more generous, and that one just started a few years ago in New York State. Okay, so you must have these insurances if you're the employer. If you don't, the penalties and fines are astronomical. Okay, must have those insurances. So here's our example for the whole company. Who's the whole company? Oh, Tammy Two Books again. Here she goes. She's got these 3 employees. There's FILO. There's the numbers we made up. I made up for federal and state withholding. Made up similar withholdings for Embezzle, who makes $2,000 a week, and Dickie Devitt makes $600 a week. And so, for purposes of this illustration, we're going to have 13 weeks in the first quarter, which is typical, right? 13 times 4 quarters is 52 weeks. And January is going to be the month that has 5 payrolls in our little illustration here. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to figure out how much the employer is responsible for in terms of payroll taxes, okay, that have to be paid by the employer. So we got 2 columns here. I got the January gross. That's 5 weeks times 3,000. Yeah, 5 weeks times 2,000, and 5 weeks times $600 a week. Year to date, what's that? That's the total for the year. Well, this is the first month, so for January only, these columns will be equal, but this column is going to come into play, especially over here. Yeah. All right. Let's look at Social Security. Did anybody go over 142,800? You're thinking, stupid question. I'm not going to answer, and I can't anyway. Okay, it's 28,000. It's all taxable. 6.2%. Employer's got to kick in 1736. Double that is 3472. It's got to be paid in January tax deposit, which is done electronically. Medicare. Every single penny of the January gross is taxable. There's no ceiling. Just multiply it times 1.45. It's $406 for the month. What's 406 times 2? 812. Got to be paid in to the government electronically. Okay, what else? Well, federal unemployment. Both FILO and Embezzle go over the limit. What limit? The $7,000 ceiling. So only the first $7,000 is subject to federal unemployment taxes. All of Dickie Devitt's $3,000 is taxable. So it's $17,000 total. State unemployment. Well, FILO's over the limit, right? He's 11.8. Embezzle didn't get there yet, so his whole 10,000 is taxable, and Dicky Debit is nowhere near the 11.8, so his 3,000 is fully taxable. That's 24.8 total. When you get the totals, what do? Well, these are wages subject to, now you just multiply it times the tax rate. There's the Social Security rate, there's the Medicare rate, there's the federal unemployment rate, and there's the state rate that we decide to use 4% for this problem. What's this number here, this $45.60? Well, that's the $912, the weekly federal withholding for all 3 employees, times 5, okay? And that makes up the total deposit for January, federal, which probably has to get paid in every couple of weeks. The higher these numbers are, the more frequently you have to pay in the money. All right, NYSPFL, did anybody go over the $75,000 number? Not even close, right? So all of it's taxable for that purpose. This is coming out of the employee's check, yeah? It's $143.08, and the disabilities, everybody's over 120 bucks a week. So we stop that number, and it's $9, okay? So what's the deal here? Okay, so these amounts are taken out of the employee's check, and they are used by the employer to cover the cost of the Of the PFL insurance and the disability insurance, which you must have, or you will have serious penalties, yeah? So that's week or month 1, January, which had 5 paychecks. Now we're going to move on to March, which has 4 paychecks. I'm sorry, February, which has 4 paychecks. And here we go. All right. So Philo, his February gross is $12,000. His year-to-date's $27,000. That's 15 from January, 12 from February. That's 27. Or you could just look at it. There's 9 weeks times 3,000, 9 weeks times 2,000, 9 weeks times 600. There's our year-to-date numbers. Nobody's anywhere near the 142.8. So all of the February, right, not the year-to-date, all of the February payroll is taxable for Social Security, okay? All of the Medicare is always going to be taxable, okay? So it's going to be these same numbers repeated. Federal unemployment, what happened? Philo went over the limit in January. Embezzle went over the limit in January. Dicky Debit hasn't gotten there yet. His year-to-date's $5,400. Okay, state unemployment. Philo went over in January. Embezzle did not. Embezzle earned $10,000 in January, yeah? Now he's got to get to 11.8 before the employer stops paying in for him. So he needs another $1,800 to get to that 11.8 ceiling, yeah? So that $1,800 is part of that $8,000 gross pay for February. Dicky Debit is nowhere near the 11.8, and in fact, he's not going to get to that number for the whole quarter, okay? Okay, we get the totals. What do? We multiply. Multiply times the rates, okay? This is what the employer has to pay. This is what comes out of the employee's checks. And here's our February federal tax deposit. That's double, right? That's double this number, Medicare. That's the $912 a week. And that $7075's got to be paid in electronically, which, by the way, you also have to pay in what? You have to pay in these monies to New York State. Huh? Okay. Also done electronically. All right. Where does that leave us? That leaves us going into March. We'll look at the March payrolls. That's another 4 payroll month. Okay, so it's 12,000. Now we got 13 weeks altogether, so 13 times 3 is 39. 13 times 2,000 a week is 26. 13 times $600 a week, 7,800. Okay, did anybody go over 142,800? No. All taxable for Social Security, all taxable for Medicare. There is no ceiling. All right, now we get over here. Remember, Philo's over both of these in January. Embezzle exceeded the federal 7,000 in January and exceeded the state 11.8 in February. Dicky Debit, okay, where do we get this $1,600 from? Well, Dicky Debit had year-to-date earnings of 5,400 at the end of February, and he needs to get to 7,000. So that's the 1,600. 5,400 plus 1,600 is 7,000. That 1,600 is part of the 2,400 that Dickie got paid in March. Okay, all of his March pay is subject to state unemployment. Why? He hasn't gotten to the 11.8 number yet. So that's going to happen later in the year. What do you do next? You add them up and you multiply times the rates, which are givens. Yeah. This is coming out of the paychecks. That should be the same as last month, which it is. Yeah. Employer uses that to pay the insurance, which, by the way, I don't think it covers the full amount of the insurance. So that's just an extra cost for the employer. Okay, let's look at the first quarter in total summary. And what do we have? Well, if you add all 3 months together, I think that's what this cell is here. If you add all 3 months together, you should get this number here, which is what? Okay, here's our year-to-date for March. These are all 13 times 3, 13 times 2, 13 times 600 a week. Nobody got to the 142 yet, so it's all taxable for Social Security. It's all taxable for Medicare. All three of these stopped at 7,000, right? Because everybody went over the limit. State unemployment, both of those stopped at 11.8, FILO and embezzled, but what? Dickie didn't get there yet, so his entire 7,800 was taxable. These totals, what do you do? Well, if you want to do quarter for the whole quarter in one shot, you just take those totals and multiply. And there you have it. Then you have the taxes for the first quarter. Who's paying this money in? The employer is paying all of these amounts in. Yeah. In addition to the gross pay. This money is being withheld. What is the employer doing with it? He's using it to offset the cost of the insurance for PFL and disability. Okay, another way of looking at the summary for the first quarter is on an employee-by-employee basis. Well, here's FILO, right? Here's his 39,000. What's this number? That should be 6.2%. That should be 1.45%. That should be his weekly federal withholding times 13. His weekly state withholding times 13. That's his PFL. That's that 0.00511. And that's his $1.20 a week. I'm sorry, 60 cents a week. So 13 times 6. Okay. And there's his net pay for the quarter. And what does this little double asteroid say? It says the weekly summary for FILO is illustrated on the EE example tab. We're going to look at week 13. We should see the same number. What number? 25,981.41. Okay, so let's look at the employee. So this is just for FILO. Okay. This is a year-to-date summary. So what's happening is this is building up totals for the year. So you can see this is advancing by $3,000 and eventually hits what? You guessed it, it eventually hits 156 for the year, okay? So let's see what we can find here. Well, first of all, here's our first quarter, right? 13 weeks for FILO. So that ties in, well, that's a good thing, okay? If it didn't, I'd be very upset. 25,981.41 for the quarter, okay? And let's see what else we can get from this, okay? As we go along, FILO is year-to-date is building, and then when it gets to week 26, what happens? FILO goes over that 75,000 number. What 75,000 number? The 75,409 number. It goes over that number, and the PFL is going to stop in this week. It's going to hit that 385.34 number, and it's going to stop. So FILO is going to get a little bit of a raise following week 26. He's going to get an extra $15 in his check. A little bit of his 26 check will be taxable for PFL. What little bit, you say? Remember, you got to get to 75,409, so it's a few bucks. Okay. Now what happens? Well, we go along, and FILO's having a great time making this money, and we get to week 48, and what happens? Philo's over the $142,800 Social Security limit. So the Social Security withholding stops at $88,530.60, which is the 142.8 times 6.2%. Okay. Philo gets a nice raise. Okay, so he pays a little bit of Social Security in week 48. What little bit? Well, you got to get to 142.8, right? So it's going to be $1,800 of that $3,000 check in week 48. Should be taxed over here. Okay. Now, once we get to that number, we're over the limit, and what happens? Philo gets a nice raise for the remaining 4 weeks of the year. What kind of a raise? Well, he gets an extra $186 a week. Okay. So this shows you how the numbers build up for the one employee year to date. And why do we do this? Because it seems like students have difficulty with this concept of ceilings and year to date. So hopefully this visual gives you a better idea of what goes on in terms of withholdings and so forth. Okay. What else can we say about this? Well, this is what would show up on Philo's W-2. I'm sure that probably everybody has gotten one of these from one time or another, having a job. So this is gross pay for the year, 156, and there's the Social Security that was taken out and the Medicare that was taken out. It's pretty much a useless number, that 2262, and for that matter, so is the 8853. You can just kiss these monies goodbye, right? This number here is a 28,080. That's Philo's weekly federal, right? 540 times 52, and then 216 times 52 should be what? Should be that number. So Philo's going to fill out his personal income tax return form 1040, and he's hoping against hope that what? That his federal tax liability is less than 28,080, and he will get a refund. Of course, if he's married, he's got to add his wife's pay in as well, and that changes everything, right? Same thing with the state. Philo's hoping, well, I hope my state tax liability is only $10,000, so I can get a $1,232 refund. Yeah? So that's how it works. I hope you have found this illuminating, and until next time.